Hello, everyone, and welcome to Quiz and Hers, the podcast where we test each other's trivia knowledge and the strength of our relationship. I'm Hallie. I will be the quiz mistress today, asking the questions, and I am here with my fiance, Justin, who will be answering them.
Correct.
So, on this podcast, what we do is one of us will ask the other 6 questions from the categories arts and literature, geography, science, sports and games, sounds and screens, and history. And all of the questions will be tied together by a common theme. We'll ask the questions, the other person tries to answer them, and then I'll go into a brief discussion about each topic. Ready to go?
I am ready.
All right, so the theme today, which is a bit of a stretch, it's a bit of a stretch, this name,
Okay.
is Dammit, I'm Mad, that I could not think of a better name for this game. And the reason I'm calling it that is because Dammit, I'm Mad is a palindrome, and the theme of this game is palindromes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
I really like palindromes, and my freshman year of college, I had to write a paper about palindromes, and we tried to make the whole paper a palindrome, but we couldn't. Do you remember we were really obsessed with that website, Palindrome Generator?
Yeah, I
and
do
we
remember
came
this.
up with like tons of them, and I wish I could find it now, but I can't. But anyway, all the questions today are going to be related to palindromes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay,
All
let's
right.
do it.
Question 1, arts and literature. Which English playwright, poet, actor, and literary critic, who also popularized the comedy of humors, coined the word palindrome in the 17th century?
Okay. Okay, so there's a couple of possibilities. So, could be...
Everyone now can listen to Justin's thought process.
Well, it's more interesting than when you have to answer a question and you just sit there in silence.
That's true. Sometimes I sing or hum.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna do it millionaire style. I'm gonna talk through it.
Okay. I'll be Regis.
So it could be Marlowe. So it's not Shakespeare, I know that. Because Comedy of Humors is not one of his. So when it's not Shakespeare, it's usually Marlowe or who's that other one? It's like Benjamin something.
Let's just say for the record here, you have to give a last name.
No, I know.
Okay.
What was the last name?
Okay.
So I guess that's not right.
I'm just saying, for the record, for the future, if
Yes.
it's a person, you have to give the
Standard trivia rules, yes. What's the name? The listeners are screaming it at me right now, I'm sure.
I'd actually never heard of him before this. This isn't exactly my forte either.
Alright.
Just pick something.
Alright, I'll say Marlowe.
No.
No? Who
You
is it?
were almost on the right track. It's Ben Jonson.
Ben Jonson, yep, okay.
All right, so I'm going to talk a bit about him.
Okay.
Benjamin Jonson, known to his friends and Wikipedia, and to me going forward as Ben, was born in 1572 in London. He was raised in Westminster and went to Westminster School, where he was taught by William Camden, a famous English antiquarian, historian, and topographer, who wrote Britannia, which is a chorography of Britain. If you're wondering, a chorography, not to be confused with choreography, is the art of describing or mapping a small region.
Okay.
So it's sort of like not an entire country, like maybe just like a small area.
Okay.
You sort of described it, and
I see.
I don't know. I didn't know this existed until now, so I thought that was interesting.
Yep.
After Westminster School, Ben was supposed to go to Cambridge, but he couldn't because he had to be an apprentice for his stepfather, who was a bricklayer.
Okay.
After being an apprentice bricklayer, he went to the Netherlands to fight with the English regiments in Flanders. According to a manuscript of conversations between Ben and the poet William Drummond, Ben fought and killed an enemy soldier in single combat, which is pretty badass.
Awesome.
And then he promptly went back to England and worked as a playwright and actor, so it was pretty short-lived, but he had an interesting fight in the middle of it.
Okay.
By 1597, he became a playwright employed by the English Public Theatre and was known for his comedies. However, he also wrote tragedies. Unfortunately, none of the early ones survived. In 1597, must have been a pretty busy year for him, he wrote the play The Isle of Dogs with Thomas Nash. It was a satirical comedy that was apparently too lewd for audience members and even satirized the Queen, which was very taboo for the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's still pretty taboo today.
Yeah.
Apparently, 3 of the actors in the play were arrested afterwards.
Oh, wow.
Nash's home was raided, but he escaped imprisonment, and Ben was actually jailed and charged with lewd and mutinous behavior.
Great.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Also, I checked, and there is apparently no relation between this play and the recently released Wes Anderson movie, Isle of Dogs.
Oh, okay.
Just in
Good
case anyone was wondering. No relation. Ben was arrested again a year later for killing a man in a duel. So that's 2 men that he's killed so far. He pled guilty, but was released after he recited a brief Bible verse and got branded on his thumb. What a weird time.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
Okay.
Out of all his plays, Ben is most well known for his production of Every Man in His Humor. This was part of the genre which is popularized by Ben along with George Chapman, which is called the comedy of humors. In the genre, each character has 2 or more characteristics, here known as humors, that dictates their personality and behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in the play Every Man in His Humor, one character is controlled by a suspicion that his wife is cheating on him. So that was his humor.
I see.
Essentially.
So
humor in this case does not mean funny.
No, it means like the 4 humors of like Greek medicine, right? I've read a little bit about this once.
I think it is. So I think it's related.
There's like, one character is going to be like melancholic and one's going to be like angry or whatever.
Right, but each one has like a specific thing.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So most sources actually support the fact that Shakespeare was in the first production of this play.
Oh, wow.
Which
as
is
an
cool.
actor.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah, he played some old man character, which I couldn't find anything else about. But apparently Shakespeare had a liking for playing old men characters. I don't know.
Okay.
Ben's other most famous comedies are The Alchemist and Volpone, which he wrote in the early 1600s. His productivity began to decline in the 1620s, but he was still famous. A group of younger poets at the time called themselves the Tribe of Ben. See actual proof that his friends called him Ben.
Yeah, okay.
One of his later plays, The New Inn, got a cold reception, and he actually wrote a poem condemning the audience, which he called Ode to Myself.
Wow.
So humble of him.
Yeah. There are some celebrities of today that I could imagine doing that, frankly.
Oh, yes, for sure. So yeah, he got pretty mad because they didn't like one thing he did. So he kept writing until his death in 1637, but his plays were never as good as they were in the beginning. And he is buried at Westminster Abbey.
Cool.
Yep. All right. Question 2. Yep. Geography.
Okay.
Which body of water is part of the most famous palindrome, published by Lee Mercer in the November 13, 1948 issue of Notes and Queries? You don't have to name the palindrome.
Oh, the Panama Canal?
Yes.
Yeah.
For anyone who's wondering, the palindrome is a man, a plan, a canal, Panama.
Right, yeah.
So I'm going to talk a bit about the Panama Canal.
Okay.
All right. So the idea for a canal across the Isthmus of Panama, which is also known as the Isthmus of Darien, came about as early as 1534 when Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor and King of Spain, wanted to create a route through the Americas so that the Spanish ships could reach Peru, I assume for trade and all of that. Right,
yeah.
So he thought of the idea, but it didn't get anywhere.
I mean, it wouldn't have been possible at that point.
There was nothing they could do.
Right.
But he thought of it first. So credit to Charles V.
Okay.
The next mention of it really was 1788 when Thomas Jefferson said that the Spanish should create it. And right after that, Alessandro Malaspina, an Italian explorer and officer for the Spanish Navy, outlined plans for its construction.
What year was that?
That was 1788.
Okay.
So he did outline the plans. Again, I think it was still too early and it wasn't possible. So nothing really happened yet.
Okay.
And then throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, other canals were built, including the Erie Canal in the United States. In 1826, the U.S. began negotiations with Gran Colombia, which is now Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, and Panama, to try and build the canal. But Simón Bolívar denied their offers. In 1843, London reached an agreement with the Republic of New Granada to build it and called it the Atlantic and Pacific Canal, but the plan was never carried out. So they're not really getting very far.
Right, yeah.
In 1855, the United States built the Panama Railway to cross the isthmus, which helped a bit with trade, but still not there yet.
Right.
In 1881, Ferdinand de Lesseps of France, who built the Suez Canal, raised the money for a Panama Canal, but it was much more difficult because of the rainforest climate of Panama compared to, how it was to do the Suez Canal.
What was his name?
His name was Ferdinand de Lesseps.
Sorry, say it once more.
Ferdinand de Lesseps.
De Lesseps?
De Lesseps.
Oh, okay.
But it's pronounced de Lesseps.
Okay.
So anyway, the construction did not go well, and they eventually just ran out of money in 1889. Also, a lot of people were getting sick. There was a lot of mosquito-borne disease.
Right.
People were dying. It just wasn't a good situation. They ran out of money.
Okay.
So in 1903, Panama declared independence from Colombia, and Felipe Bunau Varilla, the new ambassador to the U.S. from Panama, signed the Hay-Bunau Varilla Treaty, giving the U.S. the rights to build the Panama Canal Zone, which is what they called it.
Yeah.
Many Panamanians considered this a violation of their new independence, so they weren't too happy about it. Nevertheless, in 1904, the U.S. took control of the canal and established the Isthmian Canal Commission to oversee construction. President Theodore Roosevelt appointed John Finley Wallace as chief engineer of the Panama Canal project, but he was overwhelmed by the lack of proper equipment and resigned a year later. Then John Frank Stevens took over. Before building the canal, Stevens first built housing, hotels, water systems, and other infrastructure for the incoming workers, which was a good idea that nobody else had thought of. So,
makes sense that, you need somewhere for people to live and water for them to drink.
Exactly.
They're going to build a fucking canal.
Right.
Yep.
And then also Colonel William C., I don't know how you pronounce this, Gorgas, who was the chief sanitation officer of the canal construction, was able to actually eradicate the mosquito-spread diseases in the area in just 2 years.
How?
I think, nets and, he came up with all of these ways to just prevent people from getting sick. But unfortunately, over 5,000 workers still died of diseases and accidents during construction. Mm-hmm. I think they basically just, got it to the point where, people weren't getting as sick as they were. Right. It wasn't just killing everybody. So it was they could continue to move on. But, people still died.
Yeah, okay.
Although the French had attempted to create a sea-level canal, Stevens said it was impossible and argued for a canal with a lock system to raise and lower ships, which is what exists to this day.
Yeah.
So this actually created the largest dam and the largest man-made lake in the world at the time, which are known as Gatun Dam and Gatun Lake, Gatun.
Okay. Didn't know that.
And the construction lasted from 1904 until 1914, and it's still going strong.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yep. Ready for question 3?
I'm ready.
All right, this is a science question.
Okay.
What shape, also the name of something that may be used to hold your ponytail in place, can be formed by a palindromic DNA or RNA sequence?
What?
What shape,
okay,
also the name of something that may be used to hold your ponytail in place, can be formed by a palindromic DNA or RNA sequence?
I don't think I understand what this question is.
It's asking what is the shape formed by a palindromic DNA or RNA sequence, also the name of something that can be used to hold your ponytail in place. I don't know. I tried to rephrase it. I thought maybe that would help.
Okay. A shape formed. DNA is a double helix shape, but that's not.
No, I'm asking about a palindromic DNA or RNA sequence.
I know.
Okay.
Wow. This is a good question.
Thank you.
Okay, holds a ponytail in place. I don't know.
Should I tell you?
Yeah, all right.
It's called a hairpin sequence.
Okay.
Like a bobby pin?
Yeah.
So basically it's called a hairpin sequence because it has that look of a bobby pin where it flips over and it's shaped like
I see.
But long.
Right. Oh, that's interesting.
Yep. So just to preface this, a palindromic nucleic sequence, which would be DNA or RNA, is slightly different from a regular palindrome because DNA and RNA have reverse complements, which I will explain. The base A binds to T, or U in RNA. I don't want to confuse anybody here. The base C binds to G. Therefore, a palindromic DNA sequence would be ACCT, AGGT, because reversing the order of its complementary bases gives the original sequence. Feel free to write this down if you're still confused. But yes, if you just picture ACCT, AGGT, and then you're folding it in on itself,
right.
every base lines up with the one it's supposed to.
Yeah, okay.
So a hairpin structure of DNA or RNA, which is also known as a stem loop intramolecular base pairing, is when a palindromic sequence flips onto itself to form a double helix. They are usually not a perfect palindrome, so there is usually a loop on one end in which the bases are not paired. So picture just like, I don't know, like a U but with a bulge at the bottom sort of thing. So this can happen with single-stranded DNA or more commonly with RNA. The stability of the structure depends on its length, the number of mismatches, and the bases that are in the paired region. Bonds between guanine and cytosine, G and C, are more stable than those between adenine and uracil, A and U, because the GC bond has 3 hydrogen bonds, but the AU bond only has 2 hydrogen bonds.
Oh, okay.
So the more G's and C's, the better, basically. The more stable.
Okay. Oh, I never thought about that one of those would be more stable. I mean, I knew that cytosine and guanine had 3 bonds, and that adenine and thymine or uracil had 2.
Right.
Didn't occur to me that, of course, that would be a more stable, stronger bond. That makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
So the hairpin structures are important building blocks in RNA secondary structures. They can direct RNA folding, provide recognition sites for proteins, and serve as substrates for enzymatic reactions. They are most famously found in transfer RNA, also known as tRNA, which has 3 stem loops and 1 stem that come together in a cloverleaf pattern. One of the 3 unpaired loops has a sequence of 3 bases at the end called an anticodon, which matches up with a codon on messenger RNA. The tRNA carries an amino acid, and once matched up with its codon, it can add that amino acid to a growing chain to form a protein.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So this is just how proteins are formed.
Yeah.
So these stem loop-based molecules, tRNA, are the ones that bring the amino acids over to the RNA to match them up to make a protein.
Yeah, I kind of remember this from high school biology.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I just wrote this from my brain. I've learned about DNA and RNA and protein roughly 5 times in my life, at least. Stem loops are also seen on messenger RNA, where it binds to the ribosome during this process of protein formation that I just talked about, which is known as translation.
Right.
Hairpin structures are also found in many ribozymes, which are RNA molecules that catalyze reactions like an enzyme. One ribozyme, called the hammerhead ribozyme, is made up of 3 stem loops that meet in a central unpaired region, and it catalyzes the reaction that reversibly cuts RNA. So those are just some of the more famous stem loops.
Okay.
That's about it.
Okay.
Just pretty cool. Like, it's really involved in all the important things.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep. All right. Question 4, sports and games. The biggest contests for the sport involving which palindromic vehicle take place in Monaco and Indiana?
Oh. Okay. Yeah. All right. Let me just make sure that I'm not being an idiot here. Yeah. Okay. Race car.
Yep.
Okay.
Obviously, the 2 contests I was referring to are the Monaco Grand Prix and the Indianapolis 500. So I'll talk a little bit about each.
Okay.
These 2 races plus the 24 hours of Le Mans form the Triple Crown of motorsport.
Okay. That's cool.
Yep.
I didn't know that.
All right.
I didn't know there was a Triple Crown of motorsport. Actually.
There is.
I knew there was a Triple Crown in baseball and horse racing. Huh.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. The Monaco Grand Prix has been an annual race since 1929. The first race was won by William Grover Williams driving a Works Bugatti Type 35B. Baron Philippe de Rothschild also competed in this first race. Throwback to the wine episode.
Yeah, I was going to say, the wine guy?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Since 1955, the Monaco Grand Prix has been part of the Formula One World Championship. In the 1960s, Graham Hill from Britain won the race 5 times and became known as King of Monaco and Mr. Monaco. The all-time leader, though, is Ayrton Senna from Brazil, who won 6 times in the late 80s and early 90s.
Wow.
In terms of car makers, McLaren has the most wins with 15 since the 80s.
Okay.
Yep.
McLaren.
Yep.
I've never heard of that.
You never heard of McLaren?
No.
Really?
No.
Oh, I definitely have.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. So the Monaco Grand Prix is a narrow course through the streets of Monaco.
Yep.
It involves many tight corners, elevation changes, and a tunnel. Because of this and the slower speeds, the races have had many unexpected winners. In 1982, one driver led the first 15 laps, and then another driver led until 4 laps from the end, where he spun off on the wet track and lost a wheel. The next leader also spun off the track. On the last lap, the leader ran out of fuel, followed by the driver in second place. So the two in the lead at the very end both run out of fuel.
What?
Then that first guy I mentioned who lost a wheel somehow jump-started his car and won. So these days it is obviously less insane, but
that's
continues.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it continues to draw huge crowds.
Yeah.
Not quite as crazy though these days. All right, now on to the Indy 500.
Okay.
So it is also an annual race held at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in Speedway, Indiana, which is a suburb of Indianapolis. It draws crowds of more than 250,000 people. The track is 2.5 miles, and the drivers race 200 laps, equaling a total of 500 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Hence the name of the race.
Yeah.
And I always wonder if it inspired the name of the Proclaimers song.
I doubt it.
Just made me think of it. Except it's driving, not walking, so it's much quicker. The first race was in 1911 and was won by an...
Da-da-da!
Oh my god, you scared me. Da-da-da! Okay.
Sorry, go on.
The first race was in 1911 and was won by an American named Ray Haroon driving a car make called a Marmon, which doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
The following 8 races were won by European car makers. Just some interesting things about it. The Purdue All-American Marching Band performed on the track near the finish line starting in 1927 and is still the host band of the race.
Oh, that's cool.
Which I figured we could appreciate as marching band people.
Yeah.
Only 9 female drivers have ever qualified. Sarah Fisher has competed most of any female with 9 races under her belt. But Danica Patrick is the only female to lead in any laps in the race.
Yeah.
So there haven't been any winners yet, but hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Danica Patrick's really good. So.
Yeah, she is.
All right, that's it.
Okay.
Question 5, sounds and screams. Which Austrian composer's Symphony number 47 in G is nicknamed the palindrome? And that's all you get.
Okay. Well, Austrian, you said. Symphony number 47?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, I mean, the one who wrote like a billion symphonies is Mozart, and he was Austrian. Is there anyone else it could be? Yeah, I mean, after that was not the age of, like, lots of symphonies. Like, Beethoven only wrote 9, and... Yeah, okay, I'll say Mozart.
Nope.
Who is it?
You skipped somebody.
Who?
Haydn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was sort of in between Mozart and Beethoven, which you will learn in a moment. Joseph Haydn was born in Rohrau, Austria. It sounds like a sound a dog would make. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it's called Rohrau. Rohrau?
Yeah, probably.
I just sound like a dog. Anyway, his father Matthias was a wheelwright, and his mother Maria was a cook for the Count of Rohrau. Matthias was also a folk musician who taught himself to play the harp. When Haydn was only 6 years old, his schoolmaster and choirmaster Johann Matthias Frank suggested that Haydn be his apprentice to train as a musician. Frank rarely fed or cleaned him, so wasn't great. But Haydn did learn how to play harp and violin pretty quickly, so that's good, I guess.
Okay.
So yeah, when he was 6, he went to stay with him, and then he never actually lived with his parents again.
Uh-huh.
Haydn was also such a good singer that he got the attention of the director of music for St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna and was recruited as a choir boy. He moved to Vienna and worked as a choir boy there for 9 years. 5 years after Haydn joined the choir, his brother Michael also joined. At the cathedral, they went to school and were taught voice, violin, and keyboard. I kind of thought keyboards were just electric pianos, but apparently the category encompasses pianos, electric pianos, clavichords, harpsichord, organs, and synthesizers.
Yeah.
If anybody was interested, I did not know that.
Yeah, it's any instrument with, like, keys.
I just thought if I was interested in it, maybe other people would be interested in it, so that's a little aside.
Yeah. Accordions, too, sort of.
So it's a lot more impressive that they learned keyboard than it sounds. So it's a lot of
there were no electric keyboards in the
No, I knew that, but then I read that, and then I was like, what does that mean then, you know? Cause...
Yeah. What year is this?
So this is like the 1740s, I think?
Yeah, 1700s. Okay.
Sorry, I kind of skipped the year part of this.
Okay.
So anyway, Haydn hit puberty 9 years later, and so was not the best choir boy anymore.
Right.
He also misbehaved and was kicked out onto the streets by his choir director. I think he cut some other boy's hair. I don't really know.
Okay.
He continued to learn about music theory and composition on his own. His first composition was the opera Der krumme Teufel, which means the limping devil. It was closed down by censors due to offensive remarks.
Great.
Inappropriate show seems to be an accidental theme in this game.
There's a lot of that going around this game.
I don't know. In 1760...
That'd be a good theme for a game.
It would be a good theme, but now I've already ruined
censorship.
it. Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm sure there's a lot more examples if you ever want to do it. In 1760, Haydn married Maria Anna Teresa Keller. He was previously in love with her sister. He and Anna had an unhappy marriage, and they both took other lovers. Not much else about his marriage. I guess it just wasn't that exciting.
Okay.
During the 1770s, he mainly worked for Prince Nikolaus. The prince played an instrument called the baryton, which is like the bass, but with more strings.
Okay.
It's spelled Baryton, so it's not baritone.
Right, okay. So what is like a... So yeah, okay.
Like picture a bass, but with like a lot more strings on it.
I see.
I'm not sure
like
exactly.
a stand-up bass? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Or, well, yes.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. I was looking at the pictures. It sort of looked like a big guitar.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know.
Huh.
I couldn't find an exact picture of the baryton. So
right, okay.
Haydn wrote 200 works for the baryton, including 126 baryton trios. Jeez. Not where they found the other baryton players. Since I don't know how popular.
Sounds like it must have been more common back then than it is now.
Yeah, for sure.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah. A few years later, the prince became interested in operas and built a theater of which Haydn became the director. In 1784, Haydn became close friends with Mozart, and Mozart even dedicated 6 quartets to him and called them the Haydn quartets, which is very confusing because you would think the Haydn quartets would be written by Haydn, but they were written by Mozart.
Okay.
Around this time, Haydn was also gaining popularity, especially in London. They invited him there for years, but he did not accept out of loyalty to Prince Nikolaus. Mm-hmm. Finally, after the prince died in 1790, he accepted their offer and huge audiences came to his concerts. He was awarded an honorary doctorate by Oxford, and his Symphony No. 92 became known as the Oxford Symphony.
Huh.
Yep. He met Beethoven while in London, and then Beethoven came to Vienna and was Haydn's pupil. It's kind of cool, because, he's just surrounded by these super famous...
I always thought Beethoven was Mozart's student. He was Haydn's student. I guess one doesn't preclude the other, but...
So Beethoven traveled to Vienna for the first time in hopes of studying with Mozart.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think he wanted to learn from Mozart, but didn't get to, and then he learned from Haydn, and still felt like he was, learning from Mozart because they were so close and similar and whatever. I don't know. All right. In 1795, Haydn came back to Vienna and became the musical director again for the new Prince Nikolaus II. In 1803, he was physically unable to compose because of his illness. He had weakness, dizziness, inability to concentrate, and swollen legs. They say he probably had arteriosclerosis, and he died peacefully in 1809. Haydn is now mainly known for developing the classical style of music. His most famous works are London Symphonies, The Creation, and the Trumpet Concerto. He also wrote the hymn that was later adapted as the national anthem of Germany, which is weird because he's from Austria. So Symphony No. 47, which is known as the palindrome, was written for 2 oboes, a bassoon, 2 horns, and strings. The reason it is nicknamed the palindrome is because the second part of the minuet is the same as the first, but backwards.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yep. So that's Haydn.
Okay.
All right, question 6. History. In which palindromic year were the first African slaves brought to Europe?
Whoa.
I wanted to give you a good palindromic year question.
Yeah, okay. That's kind of fun.
And we always talk about how we should know more dates, and I'm really bad at dates, so I thought this would be a good step in the right direction.
All right. First African slaves were brought to Europe. So, it would be early on in the Age of Exploration. So, it's probably either 1441 or 1551. Which one is it? 1441.
Yeah.
Yes!
You're good. How many did you get right? 3?
3.
Oh,
so I'm up 13 to 12 now.
Damn. So close. All right. Anyway, I'm going to just do an overview of the history of African slavery. It's pretty interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
I didn't know a lot of this.
Okay.
All right. There were slaves in Africa since ancient times, just like in the rest of the ancient world.
Mm-hmm.
However, the slaves in ancient African societies were treated more like indentured servants than like chattel slaves, meaning that they were treated more like laborers than like property and eventually got their freedom.
Right.
Ibn Battuta, a scholar who traveled the medieval world, said that in the kingdom of Mali, inhabitants vied with each other over the number of slaves they had, and one of them even gave him a slave boy as a hospitality gift.
Okay.
So, not great.
Yeah.
In some African communities, slaves were used to denote a person's status because land could not be owned. Children of slaves born into families could actually become part of their master's kinship group and rise to high levels in society, even becoming chiefs sometimes.
Interesting.
So, that's like better.
Not good.
No, it's not good.
Yeah.
I was just surprised that it wasn't just like
yeah,
property the whole time.
Yeah, ancient slavery was different than what we think of as slavery. I mean, it was still obviously pretty bad, but you know, they were treated like people, not animals.
Right.
So, yeah. So
chattel slavery was widespread in northern Africa when it was controlled by the Roman Empire. It continued after the fall of the Roman Empire in the Christian communities. After Islam spread throughout the area, it spread even to the southern end of the Sahara. And then the medieval slave trade transported slaves from Central and Eastern Europe to the Christian Byzantine Empire and the Muslim world. So basically they're transporting slaves from Europe to Africa.
Okay.
So it's like the opposite.
I see.
Direction than was in the question.
Yeah, okay.
Mamluks were slave soldiers who converted to Islam and served the Muslim caliphs during the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
The Mamluks sometimes took power for themselves.
Yeah.
They ruled Egypt from 1250 to 1517. The Arab slave trade started in the 8th and 9th centuries, and slaves were transported from the Great Lakes region of East Africa across the Indian Ocean to the Middle East. In the 1800s, the slave trade from Africa to Islamic countries accelerated, especially after the European slave trade ended. However, it ended after the European colonization of Africa around 1900.
Right.
Now, the Atlantic slave trade, which is what I was referring to in the question, began in 1441 when the Portuguese explorer Antão Gonçalves bought enslaved Africans from Guinea. Soon after, the Portuguese found that their uninhabited... This is very weird because you just talked in the last episode about Portugal and...
discovering the Azores,
which
was right around this time.
Yeah. So soon after, the Portuguese found that their uninhabited islands of Sao Tome, the Portuguese found that they were ideal for growing sugar.
Right.
And the slaves were used to cultivate the sugar.
Yeah.
The Spanish were the first to bring African slaves to the New World in Cuba and Hispaniola. Because of the growth of the slave trade, several West African empires formed which thrived on the slave trade. The transatlantic slave trade turned Africans from a small portion of slaves in 1600 to the majority of slaves by 1800, which I also did not know. As Europe began colonizing Africa, the rules regarding the slave trade became confusing. In addition to being the first European country to have African slaves, Portugal was also the first European country to abolish slavery in 1761. Which is before the Declaration of Independence was signed, which is crazy.
Wow.
Anyway, in some countries, slavery remained until they became independent from their colonizers. Slavery-like practices actually still exist in some parts of Africa today.
Mm-hmm.
And I skipped the whole part about America because I think most people know it, and this was just more of an overview.
Yep.
All right, so just to close out this episode, I'm going to give you some of the most fun palindromes I found on the internet.
Okay.
The first one is Tulsa nightlife, filth gin a slut.
Okay, sounds right.
Yep. Also, evil olive.
Awesome.
Satan oscillate my metallic sonatas.
What?
That's a palindrome.
It's not, I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Nope, but it's fun words.
All right.
Never odd or even.
Okay, yep.
That's a good one.
That is good.
Solo gigolos.
Okay.
And my favorite, a Santa lived as a devil at NASA.
What?
It doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't.
But it's funny.
Okay.
And those are the most fun ones I found.
Awesome.
But anyway, palindromes are fun.
Yeah, I like palindromes.
And that's it for today. So Justin is winning by one question.
One correct answer up. with one game each left to go.
Hopefully, I can redeem myself next time.
This is coming down to the wire.
Yes, it is. Keeping it interesting.
Yeah.
So that's it for today's game.
Okay.
If you would like to reach us, you can email us at quizandhers@gmail.com or on Twitter at quizandhers. We will see you next time.
Yep.
Bye.
See ya.
I don't understand why you're keeping water in a water bottle and then pouring it into another cup.
Makes noise.
Oh.
Can't have that in the background.
All right.